Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us with this for Hope for HIE's Peer Perspective series on housing. My name is Kimberly Taylor. I am the MSW student intern with Hope for HIE. Housing has become a pretty popular conversation amongst our families in the HIE community. So we have decided to gather some parents here to discuss their perspectives and their experiences. I do want to say before we go further, the families we do have here today are all US based. And even within the US, there are differences based on states. So this is their experience and what they've learned and what they choose to share. But just keep in mind that some things that were available to them may not be available to others, and vice versa. And again, because we're in the United States, it will look different in different parts of the world. So, with that being said, when we talk about housing, we're talking about anything, whether it's organizing what you are, the space you already have, having to remodel, moving, renting, at whatever that might mean for you and your family. And that's what we'll be discussing today. So if you would all like to, Motti, we'll start with you. If you guys want to introduce yourself, if you feel comfortable saying your child's name and their age, that would be amazing. And then we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. My name is Motti. My daughter's name is Tamima. She's a little over 2 years old now. She turned 2 in April. It's me, my wife, Rena, Tamima, my daughter, and we have a 4-year-old son as well. And we're in New Jersey.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Quanteria. I have a 9-year-old son who was diagnosed with HIE at birth. His name is Alexander. I also live with my husband and my 2 little girls who are 4 and 7. Yeah, and we are in Louisiana.
I'm Sarah, and I live with my husband and our 2 boys. Jack is 14, and Emerson is our HIE kiddo, and he is 4, and we are in Wisconsin.
Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. So when did it kind of become clear, and whomever wants to start with this is fine, when did it kind of become clear that your housing situation as you had it before you brought, when you brought your child home, wasn't going to work as it was, how you had it prior to your child? And what did you start thinking through? What was your thought process? Whoever would like to go first.
I can start. I work as a healthcare provider, actually as a physical therapist. So from the beginning, once he went to NICU and they told me that he was going to be a little bit different, I knew that eventually things would need to change for him, because that is just something that's in my mind. That's how our brains work as a physical therapist. So we knew that we would need to make changes, but luckily we didn't have to make any dramatic changes because we have a one-story home that doesn't have a lot of steps or anything. So some small changes needed to be made, but I knew from the beginning it would be different. So that's all.
What did you start to kind of think through? Like you said that it was one story, so you knew that so when you were thinking that, the concept that you had a 1 floor without steps and you're bringing home an infant, so where did you kind of go with?
We actually, because he was a smaller child, like we got away with using baby things for a long time. So we got away with like keeping him in his carrier for a long time, even though he should be sitting up and holding his head up himself. We were able to just kind of like use other things and not get into the adaptive equipment right away. But at the same time, like I still knew that, like those things needed to be thought about. But what we've done so far is just like add a little ramp to the threshold for him. Now that he's bigger and now that like we're able to, or we're needing to maneuver him differently in a wheelchair, we're making those changes.
And I'll piggyback off of that with our experience. When Tamima was born, due to the severity of her condition, we were told she would most likely not end up coming home or making it out of the hospital. But after a few months, as she progressed and started to reach certain milestones that the doctor said she wasn't capable of, it became apparent that one day the goal was to bring her home. So at that point, we started to, we kept her home. We didn't move, but we adapted her home. And it wasn't, she was just a baby. So it wasn't necessarily about mobility as much as it was about organization and storage, electrical access, the positioning of where the caregivers will be because she needs caregiver and nursing support, emergency access, and making sure that the equipment can be put in their proper places. She's on a ventilator, she has a G-tube, and although she was so little, she didn't yet have a lot of adaptive equipment. We did want to look into the future and make sure that the storage and organization was all figured out before she came home. And we did have the time to do that because she was in the hospital for 7 months before she came home.
Thank you.
Yeah, for us, it was pretty apparent when we knew that Emerson was going to make it out of the hospital, that he was going to have severe disabilities. We were renting at the time, and he came home with minimal equipment, but it still was like you have this cart with suction and pulse ox. And as he started getting bigger, unlike Quanteria's son, Emerson was big, and he quickly outgrew things, the infant things, and needed adaptive equipment pretty early on. By 5.5, 6 months, he ended up with a trach, and then by 8 months, he ended up on a vent. So it started to pile on, like, oh, there's more equipment and more equipment and more equipment. And so it was early on, it was like Motti with the organization, storing supplies, caregiver access, etc. And then as he's gotten older, it's been, where are you putting the equipment? How are you fitting equipment through this threshold? And how are nursing staff going to support him in this space?
So Motti and Q, you both own your home at the time you brought your children home, and Sarah, you said you were renting. When did you kind of decide? Because currently you're not renting, right? You have your own house now. When
Correct.
did you decide, or what was it like, understanding these extra needs when you were renting? Like, as you said, Emerson was bigger, and as he gets bigger, needs more things. So how did you make that determination, either to continue renting or to not rent? And what was it like to rent?
Yeah, so financially, that was a big part of why we continued renting. As long as we did, we just moved to our home in October. So Emerson was 3.5 by the time we ended up purchasing a home. We continued renting because financially that's what we could manage. Our landlord was great, and we were able to kind of take over some of the basement area to store extra supplies and things. But as he got bigger, and it was a 1950s home, and trying to fit the wheelchair in didn't happen. His activity chair just barely made it through the doorways. So as he got bigger and grew, it just became more apparent, like, oh, this isn't going to work. We can't fit a Hoyer through the bedroom doorway. And once kids are over 35 pounds, they're technically a 2-assist transfer. So we had to start thinking about that as soon as we had nursing care. And it was a process. There's not a lot of single-story homes here in Wisconsin where we're at, and the ones that were on the market were very old and dated, and you still would have to do a ton of renovations to make doorways work or layouts work. So it was a really it was a very trying process.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And you were able to, like you said, you now own. So when you were renting, were you thinking how would our landlord, like, how would we do this stuff at all? Or we were just like, we just have no choice. We're going to have to make this moving a priority. What were your thoughts of that?
Yeah, we knew that we had to move, and our landlord knew that too. He allowed us to take down a wall in Emerson's bedroom to make more room for his hospital bed. And you know, you can only do so much without completely renovating a home. So it was, we always knew that we were going to need something. I think that since, you know, he was 3.5, it allowed us to look at what other people were doing. And we were able to then have some insight when we were looking for homes on what to look for and what we could do as far as modifications in the future.
And then, so Q, when we spoke earlier, you had mentioned that you have been considering, you were doing you were doing a modification to your current home.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, we are actually just finished up with our modifications to our home. So we have, we bought it actually when I was like 8 months pregnant. So not expecting that things would take a turn. And so we just kind of bought it for the three of us. But since then, we've had to make those modifications. But we just finished up with widening the doorway into the bathroom, and then converting the tub into a roll-in shower. He had a bath chair, but like I'm not a very strong person. And my son is 9 and is just now starting to approach 60 pounds, but it's a lot for me right now. So trying to transfer him and get him in and out of the tub. And he's a very active guy, lots of spasticity and tone and stuff. So it can get very dangerous when he's slippery and wet. So we've had some close calls where it's been very scary trying to transfer him. So we knew that we needed to change the bathroom to make it an easier situation. So we have a roll-in, a shower chair now for him to sit in, and like it tilts backwards and we can just roll him in, you know, kind of just a quick transfer versus me trying to walk through the entire house, maneuver, turn this way and put him down in the tub and, you know, all of the extra rigmarole. But yeah, we did that as well as the thresholds, the small ramp. What we are lacking is storage space.
What did that look like for you to get the modifications that you did receive?
We are just now completing it in the summer or spring of 2026. I started my process in the summer of, but maybe fall of 2024 officially. We got approved for the waiver program in Louisiana summer of 2025. And then we, after lots of, you know, waiting and paperwork and fill this form out and this person has to do this, you know, all of the things, we finally got it done this past spring.
Yeah. Motti, you want to tell us a little about what you have done? I know we're going to touch a bit more on organization. I know that was your amazing organization process for Tamima, but what else have you, can you tell us a little bit about her layout and for her at your house?
Sure, absolutely. So we took a look at different options in our house to see where she would be most comfortable and also where whoever's taking care of her at the moment would be comfortable as well. And we decided on the basement. Tamima has temperature instability, so we needed an environment where we could control the temperature more easily. We did put in a mini split there. We do have a walkout entrance in the basement. So as far as accessibility to come in and out of the house, it just seemed like it made the most sense combined with the privacy of the space. So I think privacy is a factor that, can sometimes be a luxury, but at the same time should be a consideration, especially if there's nursing or caregivers coming in, that they feel comfortable, that they're not invading the space, and that the other kids or the rest of the family doesn't feel that there is that invasion of privacy at certain times, like in the middle of the night. So the basement just seemed like the best fit to put Tamima.
And how did you ensure that you have the temperature regulated for her?
So we put in what's called a mini split, and we set it to 80 degrees. That's the average temperature in her room. So the air conditioning and the heating unit in the house, we just turned it off for the basement, that it doesn't even try. And we rely solely on the mini splits. And we also have a Dyson heating fan that we turn on as needed to help get it warmer faster. As in the summer, it's actually a little harder to warm the house because the heater, if it's hotter outside than it is in the house, it doesn't necessarily want to kick on. Which you think it might be the opposite, but it's actually a bit more of a challenge. But another thing that we also did was humidity control in the basement, because the humidity can affect the vent from getting a lot of water in the tubes. So we actually put something in the basement that controlled how humid it would get, to make sure that that's balanced too. So these are things that I never would have even thought of if not for the circumstances.
Did you have to? Did you go through this on your own, or did you have any help from? Did you go through like any programs for the state to get these modifications for your house for her, or did you just go for it on your own?
We did it on our own, partly due to the fact that we didn't necessarily the timing of her coming home and everything. When we knew she was going to come home versus when she actually came home, I don't think would have warranted enough time to make all the modifications that we wanted to, had we gone through another program. But had I had more time, it was something I likely would have looked into.
And Sarah, can you tell us about some of what that looked like for you with Emerson, the modifications and any waiver processes you may have gone through or not gone through?
Yeah. So when we were looking at the home, we knew that we would need to have a more accessible way for him to get into the home from the garage. We ended up purchasing a elevated ranch. So there's like a 30-inch rise from the garage. And then we knew that he was going to need a lift system. And I apologize if you can hear all the background noise. I'm sitting outside because they're doing modifications inside right now.
I think we're all used to background noise in our circumstances.
And we knew that a bathroom modification remodel was going to be in the cards for him. Emerson also has temperature instability. So showering him isn't like super easy because he would get cold too quickly. But there are also times where he needs a shower versus just being in a tub. When we were moving in, we knew right away that Emerson was going to end up with a primary bedroom. So he does have the primary bedroom with the ensuite. And we started the process last September, actually, before we even purchased the home, of making sure that a ceiling lift could be installed in his bedroom to our specifications. That was something we made our offer contingent on. And then we officially requested a ceiling lift system for him and bathroom remodel and a flux step lift for the garage. We did go through our county waiver program because they are high cost items. They end up having to review it and then they submit it to the state for approval. We were able to get all of the home modifications covered under our waiver after a lot of pushback. The biggest pushback was for the ceiling lift because he was only 3 at the time. But he was almost 50 pounds. So he was a big boy. we now have the ceiling lift in his bedroom. It goes into his bathroom. It splits and has a track that goes to his bathtub and a track that will go to his shower as well. For the bathroom modifications, there was a jacuzzi style tub. We had that removed. We built a platform for a standalone tub, and so that we're not bending so much to bathe him. And then the shower we ripped out and made into a roll-in shower. There was also a wall that was closing off the toilet. Emerson doesn't currently use the toilet, but he has been letting us know that he might need to go. So we wanted to give him that opportunity. So we removed that wall so that the toilet was accessible for him as well. Our solution for the garage was a flex step. So it's stairs that turn into a platform lift. It saves space and serves the purpose of getting him in the house. And then, yeah, those are the modifications that we've done so far.
So thank you all for sharing. For those of you who did go through trying to get some assistance, what was, Q, you said it's taken you a year. Sarah, you've expressed you've really had to kind of advocate quite a bit. What were some of the headaches that you went through, but then what are some of, if any, what are some of the more positive, maybe surprising things you have found?
I've lived in this state since birth, and so a lot of things I've gotten used to how things operate here. I'll say that. And we are very laid back state, so I knew that things might not move very expeditiously. However, I think what worked out well was that just, my knowledge, I think knowing kind of what to do, but at the same time, I also did not know like how things work on the state level to approve things. I didn't know like what services like were available. I didn't know like the process of it, like you have to get quotes from 3 different vendors in order for them to pick which one they want to give you. And then as far as like contractors for our bathroom modification. So I'm looking through a list and trying to find contractors who are willing to do this and who know what to do. And so I'm doing all of this research on like, what does this look like? This is what I would like for it to look like, but this is what they offer. This is what is actually covered by the state, how much they're actually going to, sorry, I'm trying to get my words crazy. I'm having trouble with my words. But I think I was just kind of surprised a little bit by the process for one. But also once we like did get things going, like it went pretty quickly. There are some wonderful people within this very slow system. So there were some bright spots where there were some people who really cared and were like, hey, I saw that you got this contractor, but I know that they don't do good work. So like, why don't you try this one over here? So that's what actually happened. And then we got that contractor and they were done in 3 days. It took forever to get them to get here and get the quotes and get OT and PT to sign off and, make sure we had all of our equipment and all that kind of stuff. But once they got here and started, like they told us 3 days and they were done in 3 days. So that was wonderful. Because, again, like I'm now having to move my son and all of his equipment, his G2 feedings and all of his chairs and all of his things out of the house for 3 days and just being paranoid about dust and all of that stuff while they're working on the modifications. So, it was nice to be able to like have it done when they said it was going to be done. And then, like I said, just those few bright spots within our slow system. That was great.
Anybody else? Any surprises or headaches with um, getting your spaces ready for what your children need?
For me, it was surprising that the ceiling lift was the hardest thing for us to get approved, considering it was the lowest cost of all of the items. But it was also the first thing that we requested, and it took a lot of back and forth with our county on it, and it's just, as parents, we do a lot of advocating and a lot of work already. And it just was like, this is a lot more work that we have to do. And that so much of it kind of fell on us to do. Like you said, you have to get these bids, and our case manager was willing to help us with that, but she didn't know exactly what we needed because she's not in our home. She doesn't know what this life looks like exactly. So it was easier in a sense for me to do it so that there wasn't this back and forth. But it's just frustrating at times that we have to work so hard to get our kids the supports that they need just to thrive in their own home. For us, Emerson qualified for the waiver while in NICU, and we did our intake while in NICU. So he's been on it for almost 4 years already. And so we had been talking with our case manager about they would approve, or things that they could do potentially. So we had an idea going in, and we kind of were already working on our letters of medical necessity and everything going into it. But it just surprises me sometimes. Sorry, there are balloons on my porch. They're popping. It surprises me sometimes the amount of ableism that kind of exists within these systems that are supposed to help families and help children with disabilities. But then, like you said, you also have bright lights too, where there are some really amazing people that you meet while you're going along this journey. And some of those people are the contractors that are like, hey, yeah, doing a ramp isn't going to work here. We have this product that I think would be really great. Or we have this bathtub that has an inline heater that would help with the temperature instability. So like, it's kind of equal where you have these not so great experiences, and then you have some really amazing experiences along the way.
I appreciate hearing that, and I'm sure other families do as well, because as what I've heard from all of you and from other families, just that constant frustration of, why do I have to fight for this? This should be something that's a given, and yet here you are, So it is nice to hear. That's wonderful to hear when there's those there are the contractors who are like, oh no, let me point you in the direction for what you might need, and then you can decide for your family. So kind of from that, then, we've talked about you've made some modifications, you've made some changes. I would like to go into talking a bit about, you've all discussed, equipment and organization and storage space, whether you have enough or not enough. And I'd like to start with Motti on this, because I have seen the amazing way you've organized your daughter's room. Could you both, all of you, share just some ways that you make things work with what you have, and how you've done that, what you've done And again, Motti, I'm going to kind of start with you, especially around Tamima's amazing room that you had. Like, I'd love to, I know we can't do it here, but I'd love to sometime have you share just how you organize it. It's so phenomenal. So if you want to walk us through some of that.
Sure,
and why
absolutely.
you organized it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. While she was in the hospital, it's a much different environment there. They have things readily accessible with the snap of a finger. Someone will cart it over. Whereas in the house, you need to already not have a place for it, but know where that place is because you might need it in a jiffy, and you don't want to have to think, where's this, where's that. It started with the electric access, another thing we took for granted in the hospital, but making sure that there were enough outlets spread out throughout the room. And then we did put a lot of effort into clearly labeling and organizing her daily supplies, making sure that she had a separate area for backup inventory because quite often we didn't need all of the inventory out in the shelves. So we had a closet and everything was organized. So someone, because it was very important for us that someone, if a substitute nurse comes in or someone else comes in, that they know where everything is, because they might just come in and say, all right, I got this, but then they're looking for this, looking for that. And especially when they need it in the snap of the fingers, that everything was clearly labeled and organized, including a dedicated emergency bag that was always checked. We have that checked every single shift. We made sure that the tubes, the cords, the equipment, that the pathways are clear, and that we have a system for keeping inventory to make sure that when something runs low, we're notified enough in advance so that way we have enough time to replenish it. Because there's a lot of stock that's used more than one might realize when it comes to just the supplies. We also, keeping important medical and care information accessible was very big for us. So we have like a poster board in her room that we hang up, and we constantly keep updating her schedule of what needs to be done for her cares, her emergency information, what medication she takes and when. We have all these different charts that are printed out and updated. So that way, again, anyone coming in, and especially in an emergency situation, we just pull it off the wall and give it to the person, in the ambulance and say, just list the medications, everything. Here it all is. So making sure that that's part of the setup in the room was very important. And then also, lastly, something that can't be underrated is because we also have a 4-year-old boy and he likes to jump, all over the place, making sure that things are put away where, with other kids that won't necessarily be messed with. Like our son loves to go to her equipment and like unscrew a screw, and we would never know if we weren't there. So we have to really making sure that the layout can accommodate the rest of the family too. And we do have security cameras. They're not for security. They're because we want to detect if she God forbid has a seizure, if we want to record it or any kind of events there. But we position them in such a way where if the nurse is sitting, they have their privacy. So it's over the bed and throughout the room, but at the same time, it makes us feel safe that we can check in at any point and see what's going on, but that the nurse doesn't feel that they're watched 24/7 no matter where they are. Nice. I'm sure there might be some other things that I'm forgetting. I'll have to take a look at the layout, but those are the bullet point things that I did want to go through.
Yeah. Thank you, Motti.
That's awesome.
Would anybody else like to share how if they have a special organization or what they do with their storage, or however you have that setup that works for your family?
I think I'm a mess compared to Motti. I'll be honest. No, at my house, we have an activity chair that we also do his feedings in, but we have it parked right next to the sofa so that he's watching TV along with the rest of us. And then we have lots of open space because he's not able to ambulate, but he does roll and scoot. So we like to give him his freedom sometimes. So there are some pieces of furniture that we've taken out. And so like we don't have like a coffee table or anything. So he has room to just kind of roll and move and do what he needs to do. But my living room has another little box that also holds his, he has the percussion vest that helps with congestion, as well as a cough assist machine but we have that in a neat little box. So we're trying to keep it cute but hidden. And then in his bedroom, we're still using. We took the top of the changing table from when he was a baby and put it on a dresser so that it was longer as he grew older, when he got to be about 4 or 5, so that he had more space. But he's starting to outgrow that now, and we're having to figure out like what's next. So we're in the process of like looking for a new, larger house with storage options that we can customize, and so we can get the ceiling lift and all those fun things that you guys have. Yeah, we got to get organized better.
No, and that's something what I love about the Pure Perspective series. It's like, this is your family. It's what works for your family. It's different for everybody, and don't be hard on yourself. If this is what you've been doing, this is what you know where your stuff is. That's so cute. That's what's so great. We're hearing different perspectives so you're all good. You're good.
For us, we started with a small, like 3-tier art cart for Emerson that had like his diapers and, those personal needs. And then it also had his suction machine. As he's gotten older, he's gotten more equipment. So he also has the CPT vest, cough assist, nebs. We're now going to be doing IPV. So that's another respiratory thing. He has the vent and all this stuff. So, the vent IV poles are huge. They're bulky. So when we were looking at houses, that was something that we were also taking into consideration, how that's going to move throughout the house. And we've graduated to a much larger cart. And now that he has the IPV, we're separating it into 2 different carts. One that's going to be a bedside cart that moves from room to room with him. Then one that has just respiratory equipment. We can move it if we need to, but it stays by his bed in his room. Otherwise, having the primary bedroom, we were blessed that he has 2 walk-in closets. So we have one closet that has his clothes, bath towels, blankets, all of that stuff, along with his diapering needs. And then the other closet is all of his like medical supplies, vent circuits and all of that stuff. We then also have an overflow into the basement where it was really helpful when we were looking at the house that they had some nice organization already. So I could immediately picture these storage bins holding some of his supplies, and they ended up leaving those. So it was great. We got that organization that way. We also ended up getting, like, there's a formal dining room, and we don't use that as a formal dining room. We have now made it into Emerson's therapy room. So he has his sensory equipment and eye gaze, therapy devices all out in that room. And like Motti, a label maker is like your best friend. We also have a dry erase board in his room that has, his seizure rescue plan, respiratory event plan, all his treatments and feeds and all of that stuff. And then for us, what we tend to do, instead of like taking a sheet, if we have to call an ambulance, we have his med box. It's a lock box, and we can just grab it, and it goes with us to the hospital. I feel like, he's only 4 years old, and we've already made a lot of changes as he's grown. And I feel like it's kind of going to be like that lifelong, that we're always going to be adapting and adjusting to what new devices he's using and equipment he needs and what that storage is going to look like. I don't think that there's a perfect solution for anybody, really. It's all, like you said, based on the families and what their needs are.
And you made a point I wanted to come to. as your kids are getting older, getting bigger, maybe more equipment, different types of equipment. Is that something you always have at the forefront of your mind, or is that something you're like, I'm just taking it day by day, or is it a mix of both, or how does that work for all of you as your kids are getting older, and needs change, or yeah?
Well, it hangs out with me in the back of my mind, but I do have the mentality of like, I got to take it day by day. Like, we got to do what we got to do for right now, just because, like Sarah said earlier, like there's lots of different things that we're thinking about or being concerned about. So I have to worry about my child in this moment, and what they need in this moment. I know what has happened in the past, like past experiences. Like if you had to suddenly rush your child to the hospital, like, yes, you go ahead and write everything down ahead of time so that you don't have to repeat yourself over and over and over again to the next person. So if you have it written down and you're organized, that helps to take one less thing off of your plate. So, it's kind of like in the back of my mind, everything sits there, but I just mostly do things, one day at a time. Just handle it that way. Actually, I'll take it back. It's a prioritization system in my head. So things that are day by day, what's important today, and then other things kind of go to the bottom of the list. They stay there on the list. They're in the back of my mind, but they're on the list. So things just kind of get moved up based off of what needs to be done first, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think the same thing for me. It's like it's there. Emerson grew very quickly. He grew 13 inches in 1 year, and so we had to very quickly adapt. So I kind of keep that in my mind now that he's 4. Like, kids tend to have a 4-year growth spurt. What is that going to look like for him? His dad is 6'6", so it's like, he very well could be a very big boy. So, it's there. And I think that's something that we took into consideration when we were purchasing the home, of like, yeah, it seems like it's a lot of space right now, but as he gets bigger, the equipment gets bigger. And knowing that we're going to need space for that in the future was a consideration when we were house hunting. And then, it's prioritization. Like, you have to think about what we need to do today to make things work today. And then it kind of just, you shift as you need to, like you said.
Yeah, I really like that about the prioritization thing. For me, I like to start the process as early as possible, but yet, prioritize when that process needs to be started. For example, Tamima's 2. Eventually, she's going to need the bath seat's not going to cut it. She's going to need a roll-in, but finding out at what point that is, and then, all right, it doesn't need to be done within the next few months. It's out of my mind. I'll revisit that. Even just this morning, the PT said how our daughter Tamima, she was very uncomfortable with her foot, and I right away jumped to, all right, let me call the doctor and make an appointment. And they're like, well, let's just monitor it for now. And I'm like, no, because it could take 3 months to get in. So if it becomes a problem, hey, I have the appointment already. And if it doesn't become a problem, I could just cancel it. Because the processes for some things can sometimes take so long, knowing when to start the process, but then ease back and right, the process has started. I set it up, know at what point I need to revisit it, helps give me peace of mind knowing, all right, I know to the best of my ability what the needs might be in the future, but I also, more importantly, know at what point I need to start them. And it's not all today.
And I just want to, if I can, real quick, point out what Motti was saying there too, is like, some of these processes can take a really long time. And, Q pointed that out with getting mods done. We're going almost a year now since we started our mods. And the other thing that we have to think about is maybe we're okay right now lifting them, but tomorrow we might not be. Right? We don't know what it looks like for the future looks like for our kiddos, and we don't know what it looks like for us either. So, you prioritize things and you start things kind of a little bit before you think you might need to. And we've gotten people that have been like, why did you get a ceiling lift? You can still lift him. And I'm like, right, but he's the smallest he will ever be again. So it might seem silly right now, but he's only going to get bigger, and I may or may not get stronger. So yeah.
Well, and kind of going along with that planning. So as you're saying, you prioritize what's necessary. When it comes to something like when things do not go how, if there's an emergency or something does not go how you want it to go, you've all kind of mentioned something that you do, like Motti, you have this information right there. You've pre-planned, like if something's going to happen, this is what the nurse needs, this is what the ambulance needs. When it came to, either moving, keeping things in mind where you're at or how you've reorganized and adapted, how has emergency planning or location or anything of that come into mind, or how has that played a part in how you've made your adjustments? Like I think Sarah, we talked about when you guys bought, you were only so far from a hospital, and again, you also said you all have stuff ready for when it needs to happen, or you write it down. You're like, boom, I know what I need right off the top of my head. I'm writing this down. There we go. But like, as far as like location, or like, all of your children have like pretty significant, just with the needs, for as like if electricity goes out, what types of things have you had in place given where you are that you have to keep in mind?
Yeah, when Emerson first came home from NICU, we were about 8 minutes from the children's hospital. And he had, 17 hospitalizations in 2 years. So we knew when we were looking at houses that we needed to take into consideration the distance from the children's hospital. And so my max was 20 minutes. I want to be within 20 minutes of the children's hospital. With that, we also had to go in and consider what the emergency services looked like, if it was just EMTs or if there was paramedic level, because EMTs provide basic life support versus paramedics providing advanced life support. So, that immediately ruled out some communities for us of like, we're not comfortable being here, even though it is closer to the hospital. Because if there's an emergency, we don't know if they'd be able to support his needs. So we're 19 minutes from the children's hospital, and the emergency services here, they're paramedic level, and they actually have ventilators on all of their ambulances as well. So we felt pretty confident in their abilities to care for him if we needed to call an ambulance. And then Motti had brought up to an emergency bag. I'm not sure if other families have those. It's kind of standard for trach vent families. You have an emergency go bag. It has an ambu bag. It has backup trachs. It has backup G-tube supplies. Everything that you could need. It has seizure rescue meds. And yeah, our nurses also go through that regularly, make sure nothing's expired. And that way, if we need it, it's there and we can just grab it and go. That's why it's called a go bag.
Yeah, my son doesn't have a trach, but he has his backpack that has the seizure meds, that has extra G-tube supplies, like everything in his bag, as well as that list with his past medical history, who his doctors are. All of that stays with him at all times. And we've stayed in our urban location just to be near a hospital. We're a pretty active family as well. And like, I don't go on a vacation unless I know there's a children's hospital nearby.
Yeah, to add that another point to everything that's been said, which is all great things. An event of a power outage, it's used to be an inconvenience. It can turn into an emergency because whatever has the shortest battery life that's necessary sets the clock for how much time you have to get more power. We don't have a generator, but we did invest in small power boxes that can power the equipment. Those are charged separately, and they are charged and ready to go in the room. So if something happens with the power, that we could just plug in whatever's needed and not solely just rely on the battery backup of the equipment. And what we also did was we did call the power company and the fire department and everyone when we brought our child home and inform them, in the event of an emergency, that they should be aware that where our home is, because some power companies do take that into account when deciding which power outages to address first.
Same.
Thank you all for sharing all this information. I really appreciate you. Really appreciate you taking the time to share your family's experiences and how you've adapted, you've modified everything you've done for your children and your family. What would you want? You're all of it, at least Motti, you're 2 years along, and the rest of you are further along in the HIE journey. What advice would you have for other families who are either new to this, or they're wrapping their heads around what changes their life may be, bringing home their little one that might have some extra, where they recognize that changes need to be made to their house. It's not going to work how it is. Take your time. It's like a loaded, I just put that all on you.
I would say tap into whatever experience that you can find in other people. So through connecting to other parents, nurses, everyone has a little tidbit of what they know, and we as the coordinators of everything are responsible for tying it all together. So speaking to the nurses about certain things, speaking to the therapists, other parents, whatever experience you can get for other children that are in similar situations, so you can take a little piece from that person, a little piece from that person, and piece it all together for yourself. That's what really helped make our situation possible. It was tapping into other people's experiences, seeing, because we don't know what we don't know. This is all new and navigating it. So we're reliant on speaking to people who've been there, done that, each in their own way, to take a little bit to build their own puzzles.
Agreed. I'm going to sound like a commercial for saying this, but Hope for HIE, like finding that support group has been was and has been like just an incredible resource for me. Like just finding that group helped me to cope with everything initially, just as a parent, but also like Bonnie said, I get so much information just from, reading what people post or, what they ask questions about. I've had the same question, but I didn't say it out loud, and they asked and they got answers. I just learned so much from other parents in the support group. It's been amazing. So find your people.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo both what Q and Motti said of, tap into those resources, therapists, your providers, nurses coming into your home. If you have family that works in healthcare or long-term care that might know of some modification options that are out there, use your resources and find your people. A lot of the social media pages, Hope for HIE being one, there's so much good info out there, and there's so many people, like, we're all in this together, and everyone is like willing to share and learn from one another. And I think it's really great. It's like the club you never want to be part of, but it's great. And I think that's what you have. you have to do, and you just you know, you like hope for the best and kind of plan for the worst. Early on in the journeys, and even now, 4 years in, we still don't know what things are going to look like in the future. So you kind of make plans for what is the worst case scenario. You don't dwell on it, but you have that plan, and then you continue hoping that you don't have to use that plan, right? And just you have to continue taking one day at a time. You make plans, but you also have to take it a day at a time.
Thank you all so much for being here and participating in this peer perspective series. I really value all the information, all the wealth, all the advice, and feeling comfortable sharing with us. So thank you all so much for being here.
No problem.